Is Tennessee a college football playoff team? I'm going to just lay it out there as simple as I can because I want you to go with it where you would like to go. And also, I want to hear comments from the message board. Please click that like and subscribe button. So, Caleb, just as simple as that, is Tennessee a college football playoff team? Then we'll dig into why or why not.
Okay. Are we asking, are they a college football playoff team quality-wise, or based on the resume and how the rankings go, should they be in?
You go where you want to go.
Okay. On paper, I think there is an argument on both sides as of right now. For those who don't know, there are 4 locked-in Big Ten teams: Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon. That's the only thing that'll happen is one less team will get in if Indiana falls this weekend. That part's clear. There are also, with BYU losing over the weekend, there's going to be no more than one automatic bid from the Big 12 and the ACC. That's done. That's over. So, yeah, 4 locked-in Big Ten teams, 2 auto bids from other conferences. Obviously, the SEC champion auto bid, which would be 7, and then the group of 5 auto bid, which would be 8. Then there's Notre Dame, which would be 9, which leaves room for 3 at-large SEC teams. Let's assume Texas is like the champion at this point because they're the only one with 1 loss. Okay, fair enough. Then with 3, you would have to pick between 4 two-loss SEC teams: Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas A&M. 5 two-loss SEC teams for 3 spots. Now, again, Texas and Texas A&M are going to play each other in 2 weeks. That could sort itself out. You can knock Texas A&M out. So the question really comes down to Georgia 10-2, Alabama 10-2, Tennessee 10-2, and Ole Miss 10-2. Ole Miss beat Georgia. Georgia beat Tennessee. Tennessee beat Alabama. Alabama also beat Georgia, which is going to make this really hard for the committee to determine.
Okay, so let me go back to something you said. Do you think there is any chance that the SEC gets 5 teams in the college football playoff? Because then Tennessee's in.
Yes, there's a very good chance. One, I'm not like, this is assuming chalk goes, but I think Indiana is going to get blown out by Ohio State. And also, Dave, I'm not entirely sure that Notre Dame's going to finish undefeated. They still play Army and visit USC. Dave, I kind of find both of those games to be entirely losable. I don't know about you, but
boy, it seems like Lincoln Riley's crew's off the rails, though. But you do have to go across the country, and we've talked about travel as it pertains to just the Big Ten or the ACC. But it's a big travel game. I just don't know that Southern California has much to play for anymore. That's my concern there. Now, Army could beat them because I really believe out of all the teams that you mentioned that, I mean, what is Notre Dame's one big win?
Notre Dame's one big win is right now, funny enough, at Texas A&M. That's the one that's looking better than anything else. And should Texas A&M beat Texas, Notre Dame will have a strong case. But if they lose to Army, then they could be in real big trouble at that point. But I think really what Tennessee should focus on is where it comes down to Florida and Ole Miss, if that's fair. And excuse me, not Florida and Ole Miss. Excuse me, Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, and who's the other one I named? Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama. They got to get ahead of one of those. On paper, it's very clear as day Ole Miss. By every metric, Tennessee has a tougher schedule strength than Ole Miss. I mean, every single metric you look at, they have a tougher schedule strength than Ole Miss. Yes, Ole Miss beat Georgia, but Tennessee beat Alabama. On top of that, Tennessee's loss at Arkansas. Yeah, that's not a good loss, but Ole Miss's losses to Kentucky, that's a bad one at home. That's a much worse loss, Kentucky at home, than Arkansas.
It's a very one-sided game as well. For those that didn't watch it, that might have been the flop of the year, considering the difference in the two programs. I mean, Ole Miss just didn't show up to play that day. They got out physicaled, out pushed around. To me, if you're judging it on pure grunt grit, like Southern California, they have more talent than 5-5, which they are. So they just haven't shown up this year. There hasn't been chemistry, or there's been some issue. Tennessee, I believe, has shown up. There have just been deficiencies in their play. So that to me is two totally separate things. On that day, Ole Miss didn't show up to play. I would argue that Tennessee has shown up to play. They've had deficiencies at offensive tackle, quarterback development, wide receiver, just like any other team. But if you judge that as far as the gumption, then that should factor in there because, like I said, Ole Miss against the Wildcats did not show up, got pushed around in that game. Go watch the clips if you don't believe me. That is the ugliest loss, perhaps, of all the SEC contenders, Caleb.
It is. That's why I said resume-wise, Ole Miss has the worst resume. They have the ugliest loss. Their schedule strength is worse than any of them. You can't go by head-to-head, obviously, because there's so many. Everybody's beating everybody. And on top of that, their other loss, Dave, LSU, that ain't looking like that good of a loss anymore after LSU just lost to Florida. So Ole Miss really has nothing to celebrate at this point. Now, here's where things could work against Tennessee. And I can't honestly say I would have a problem with the committee if they did this. And Tennessee fans can't complain because you shouldn't have lost to Arkansas on the road. It's just that simple. You should not have lost that game. That's a very bad team.
Agreed.
Ole Miss is peaking at the right time. I think we all agree with that. That same Arkansas team Tennessee lost to, Ole Miss scored 63 points on. Ole Miss didn't just beat Georgia last week, Dave. They manhandled Georgia. Georgia didn't look like they belonged on the same field as Ole Miss, honestly. If you're the college football playoff and you're the selection committee and it comes down to very close resumes to a bunch of schools, y'all can hate me on this. Y'all can say it should be your overall body of work. I'm sorry. I think you should pick. I think your tiebreakers should be who's playing better right now. And who in their right mind thinks Tennessee's playing better right now than Ole Miss?
So like the last 10 games rule in the NCAA basketball tournament.
Yes, exactly.
Essentially your last month rule.
Right. Would you not take a team that looked good in February over a team that looked good in November if they had the same resume?
Not to the point where one team would have an extra loss or it be significantly different. But if that's my deciding factor, I have no problem using that.
Yes, and I think that's where Tennessee could hurt against Ole Miss. Alabama and Georgia are in. They belong in over Tennessee and Ole Miss. I'm sorry, guys, but Alabama and Georgia's schedule strengths are way higher than Tennessee's and Ole Miss. There's a gigantic gap in the schedule strengths. So it's down to Tennessee and Ole Miss.
Let me ask you this, and it's now our poll question. It is up right now, so you can jump on that if you want to. Is the season a failure if Vols don't make the college football playoff? Today's tough question, and the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Is this season a failure, Caleb, if Tennessee doesn't make the college football playoff? That's our poll question right now. I'll tabulate it here in a second. Is it a failure?
Yes, it's a failure. That was their goal at the beginning of the year, make the college football playoff, and then a 12-team playoff with the generational quarterback that I hyped up. It's an absolute failure.
I can't argue with that, especially because, Caleb, one of the things that you brought up, that no offense, but we disagreed on at the time, and I think I've been right, is that you said that a college football playoff would destroy the regular season. I actually think it's made it more engaging and entertaining. We could argue that for another day. But one of the things that you didn't say that the college football playoff has done, I don't know that anybody's excited for a bowl game, to go to the whatever bowl it might be, the Belt Bowl or anything like that. That to me has just absolutely no resonance in terms of success whatsoever. That sounds like a long month of trying to get guys together to play hard for that game, when in reality, even the coaching staff is probably thinking about the next year. That's what they did when they said, Joe Milton, you can go on to the NFL and going to focus on Nico. You're going to have players transfer out because the opt out of a bowl game. Caleb, I tried this morning to make an argument where a bowl game is somewhat exciting if Tennessee doesn't make the college football playoff. And brother, I just don't got it.
No, because there is no. I mean, who would be excited about it? All you watch the bowl game for, and I was this way last year. I've been this way for the past few years. You watch the bowl game simply to see simply to see what your team's going to look like next year. So yeah, it's a failure if you don't make the college football playoff. It's a good barometer, by the way, to judge coaches to put them under more scrutiny going forward too.
Well, like Tennessee there was excitement for the bowl game last year. Why? Because Nico, right?
Yes, exactly.
There was excitement for the bowl game 2 years ago. Why? No, Tennessee didn't make the college football playoff, but it was the Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl still carries some weight, right? Mm-hmm. But now it's a part of the college football playoff, and I just can't see Tennessee's fans getting jazzed up and gobbling up a bunch of tickets for some other bowl, the Belt Bowl. Now, that's not just Tennessee, and that's not a knock on Tennessee, Caleb. That's across the board. If you're Ole Miss, you think Jackson Dart's going to play in that game, or is he going to opt out?
Oh, he's going to opt out.
If you're Georgia and you slip into a bowl game and not the college football playoff, you think Carson Beck's going to play or opt out? These bowl games, what you said about the regular season, if you want to change it up a little bit, is spot freaking on about bowl games. I don't know. I'm not even sure. Did you know that even the Fiesta Bowl, the national championship game, that Tennessee basically broke even because they took a bunch of people? You don't make any money on the bowl games. Are you aware of that? Basically, it's a break even.
Oh, I did not even know that. No, I thought you made money. Wow, that's incredible. That's wild.
So every year, and Tennessee's actually lost $50,000 like one year when they went to a major bowl. It might have been the Fiesta Bowl the next year. But anyway, that you don't make any money. You don't get better as a team. I guess it's a glorified scrimmage because you take a look at some players, and that was fine with a guy like Nico that you've got so much pinned on in the future. But Caleb, that's not fine to say that, hey, you need to be engaged and excited about playing the University of Wisconsin. I'm just pulling the team out of left field in the Belt Bowl.
No, I absolutely not. And it's going to happen to some team. So let me ask, let's
not as exciting as a stomach flu.
Let's look at Tennessee's potential path real quick to get here, because there's about 3 ways they could get in, Dave. Okay. And you tell me which one you think is most likely. Or a few ways. One, Ole Miss could lose. Ole Miss could just lose. I mean, I'm not writing off Florida against them this weekend. Are you?
No, I'm not. And I never thought I'd say this, but give Billy Napier credit. I mean, he's got those guys in position to make a bowl game, which isn't a big deal for most schools that we've talked about to this point, but it would be a significant deal for Florida after we thought the wheels were going to come completely off.
Yeah, and that's one way. Another way, Indiana gets absolutely obliterated by Ohio State. That game can't be close, by the way. Ohio State has to blow them out.
See, that's the one that scares me, Caleb, because I don't even think that a blowout and a one-loss Indiana team wouldn't get the nod, because I think the Big Ten and SEC are working together and they'll get an equal number of teams in. That's conspiracy theory, Dave, which I usually don't go down.
There's no way. What are your at some point the reasonableness of the eye test has to come in. Indiana has not beaten one team with a winning record all year. By the way, I'm gonna call out, and this isn't some Tennessee homerism, guys. Penn State and Indiana both need to be questioned a little bit. Dave, both of them, their best win is Michigan. That Michigan win is carrying way too much weight this year in college football for teams. Okay, I mean, they're not a good football team. And so,
brother, I'm with you, but I think the politics, and listen, if you give me eye test, you kind of respect my football eye, right?
Yep.
If you gave me eye test, they wouldn't necessarily be in the top 20. But I do believe there are going to be politics at play, that the Big Ten needs to get as many teams in as the SEC, and that scares me.
Yeah, but here's the thing with that. The politics is getting the names in, okay? And if Indiana, if you can put Tennessee in over Indiana, you're putting Tennessee in over Indiana. They're going to be the better draw. So
I'll give you
that's the other part. If Indiana gets blown out, they're out. They could get blown out. That's one path. Another path is, and this is a wild one, Dave, but bear with me on this. Texas A&M, do you think there's any chance they could lose to Auburn this weekend on the road? They're a little inconsistent. They're a first-year head coach. They got blown out by South Carolina.
Not really.
Okay, because I was going to say one path is Texas A&M loses to Auburn and then upsets Texas. I'll tell you guys this: if Texas gets 2 losses, they ain't going. They have a bad resume. The other level is this: what is the college football playoff committee going to factor in conference championships game losses against teams? Because they inevitably, a 2-loss SEC team is going to play for the title and in all likelihood lose, and they'll walk away with 3 losses. Does that hurt them in relation to Tennessee, who's 10-2 and didn't go to the title game?
Can't help.
Yeah, exactly. It can't help. And then you have other issues. Look, again, I think the most clearest day path for Tennessee is Indiana getting blown out by Ohio State. And I mean blown out 50-0. If that happens, they're throwing Indiana out and they're saying, sorry, 1 loss you is just not that good. And
okay. I was thinking blowout because I don't like Ohio State that much. I was thinking blowout along the lines of 30-10. What about that? Would that get them in? Tennessee in?
Given the fact that
Indiana out, I guess is a better way.
It would not be clear as day. Put it that way. At that point, you do lean to, you're going to start leaning a little bit to the brand name. So I think it's going to get Tennessee in at that point. Look, I think the brand name is going to help Tennessee versus Ole Miss. Let's be honest, Dave. If you talk that is your prediction, and it might come true. You said at the beginning of the year, if they really had to pick between a Tennessee and an Ole Miss, they might lean Tennessee because of the brand name. You said that from the start with politicking. We might see that the first year with the committee in the playoff. And
I think you almost assuredly will. I don't know that it'll benefit Tennessee. My fear is that it benefits in Alabama.
Well, Alabama belongs in. They belong in.
But Tennessee beat Alabama.
Okay. But
I know.
But everybody beat everybody.
I know.
Look at the schedules. Tennessee has beaten 1 team with that's bowl eligible this year. 1.
No.
Alabama.